Chapter 101. Echoes from the Past. The air atop the Lighthouse of Light, where the gods had concluded a long journey, was serene. Rays from Auren's eternal torch spread warm sunlight across a cloudless sky. However, this peace did not last. Nyxara, standing amid a gentle breeze, suddenly sensed something unusual. "Something feels wrong," she murmured, her wings trembling as if brushed by an unseen force. Solian closed his eyes, focusing on the hourglass in his hands. The sand, which usually flowed steadily, began reversing direction, each grain whispering faint echoes across time and space. "The Temple of Time is calling," Solian said, his voice calm but heavy. "We don't have much time. The distortion in the timeline could collapse this world entirely." Auren stepped forward, his body radiating a brighter light than ever before. "If time breaks, everything will be caught in an eternal loop. We must act immediately." The gods agreed to depart, but the path to the Temple of Time would not be easy. They had to traverse lands engulfed in darkness, teeming with dangerous creatures lurking in every shadow. As they approached the temple, a temporal storm erupted. Swirling winds carried fleeting images of the past and future, appearing like veils suspended in mid-air. Familiar figures emerged and vanished. Scenes of gods in battle, lands of light consumed by shadow, and secrets long buried. Auren used the light of the torch to guide the way, but each step grew heavier. "Do not let these visions distract you," Solian commanded, his voice resonating like a bell. Suddenly, a figure appeared within the storm, Solian from the future. Draped in a shimmering silver cloak, his hourglass eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light. "You are on the right path," the apparition said softly. "But remember, breaking the loop will not be easy. Even a single mistake could trap you forever." Before the gods could ask more, the figure faded, leaving behind an eerie silence. The Temple of Time emerged from the mist, its walls etched with glowing ancient symbols. Alondra and Nyxara began studying the ancient book they had found earlier. The characters seemed alive, glowing faintly as they traced them, as if speaking their secrets. "This is the ritual of balanced light," Alondra said, her eyes widening with a mix of awe and concern. "But it requires a sacrifice, a fragment of each performer's soul." "We cannot avoid this truth," Nyxara replied, her voice echoing as though from a deep abyss. "Darkness has spread too far. If we do nothing, all will be destroyed." Auren, who had been silent, finally spoke. "If sacrifice is necessary to save the world, I will be the first to step forward." His words hung in the air like a solemn vow, casting a heavy pall over the temple. While Alondra and Nyxara deciphered the ritual, Zephyra felt a strange breeze. "Something is calling to me," she said, her eyes sparkling. The wind guided her to a mystical land, where light and wind intertwined into radiant spiraling columns. Zephyra discovered an ancient stone tablet etched with symbols resembling those in the book. "This is a fragment of a map," she whispered, hastily returning to inform the group. Beneath the ocean depths, Thalios encountered Lyrath, a half-dragon, half-fish sea entity. Their meeting quickly turned into a fierce battle, as Lyrath accused Thalios of disrupting the ocean's balance. "You are unworthy of this sea," Lyrath roared, summoning massive whirlpools. Thalios remained steadfast. "I am here to protect it, not destroy it," he countered, his trident glowing with immense power. The battle raged for hours. Lyrath unleashed sharks and ancient sea creatures, but Thalios summoned tidal waves to push them back. Ultimately, Thalios convinced Lyrath by saving a coral reef on the brink of destruction. Impressed, Lyrath presented him with a radiant pearl. You have proven your loyalty to the sea," Lyrath said. "Use this pearl to uphold the flow of time." After regrouping, the gods pieced together the clues they had gathered. Solkarian concluded that their world was trapped in a loop orchestrated by Umbra. Each cycle ended in total collapse. "We must break this loop," Solian declared, his voice steady yet resolute. "But to do so, we must confront Umbra and perform the ritual." His words were a final call to action, and though burdened by fear and doubt, the gods united, ready to step into the darkness that awaited them. Chapter 102. The Magic of Balance. Inside the Temple of Light, where the eternal torch's radiance bathed the halls, Alondra and Nyxara studied the intricate inscriptions etched onto a fragment of an ancient map. The mysterious book in Alondra's hands glowed softly, its golden characters shifting and shimmering as if alive. "This is the ritual of balanced light, Elandra whispered, her voice tinged with wonder. It requires the combined power of all gods. Nyxara, standing nearby, her violet eyes reflecting the golden light, replied,
"But this ritual is more than just synergy.
It demands sacrifice, perhaps even a part of one's soul."
Solian approached, his gaze lingering on the book.
"That explains the distortion in time. Without this ritual, the cycle will never end."
Auren tightened his grip on the eternal torch and spoke resolutely.
"If that is the price to banish the darkness, I won't hesitate." Having confirmed the ritual, Elandra addressed the gathered gods. Despite her small stature, her commanding presence filled the room, and her determined eyes shone brightly. "We must unite our strength at the Temple of Light," she declared, her voice clear and unwavering. "Only together can we complete the ritual." Ignis, flames crackling around his blade, raised an eyebrow. "A mortal leading us? Are you sure you're up to it?" Zephyra, standing nearby, smirked. "Your fire won't burn away the darkness without the wind. Perhaps we should hear her out." A heated debate ensued, but Elandra held her ground. With sincerity and a clear vision for a harmonious world, she persuaded each god to join her cause. In the end, they agreed to cooperate. Solara was tasked with finding a sacred tree, believed to be the root of all nature. However, the tree had long been engulfed by darkness, and to prove her loyalty to nature, she had to overcome an arduous trial. The forest she entered was once a lush paradise, but now lay in ashes.
Dry, withered trees stretched skyward like hands pleading for salvation.
Kneeling, Solara placed her hands on the scorched earth, feeling the pain of the land. "I won't let you wither away," she whispered, her eyes burning with resolve. Suddenly, darkness consumed the entire forest, morphing into colossal demonic creatures. Drawing strength from the remaining green sprouts, Solara waged a fierce battle. Trees burst forth from the ground like eternal warriors, combating the shadows. At last she restored the sacred tree, its light reviving the forest into a vibrant haven once more. Meanwhile, Nyxara ventured into a deep cavern where her darkest memories were imprisoned. The faint glow of a crescent black moon in her hand barely illuminated her steps. "You cannot run from me forever," a voice echoed from the shadows. It was a dark reflection of herself, with clouded violet eyes, embodying her fears and doubts. "I'm not running," Nyxara replied firmly. "You are merely the weakest part of me, and I am ready to confront you."
Their confrontation escalated into a fierce internal battle.
2 years. Drawing on Elandra's earlier counsel, Nyxara found the strength to overcome her fears. She embraced her shadow, achieving perfect balance between light and darkness within herself.
Ignis and Zephyra, whose elements clashed by nature, needed to learn to harmonize their powers. They chose a volcanic region, a land of fire and wind, to begin their training. "Your fire is too wild, uncontrollable," Zephyra remarked, summoning a gentle breeze to guide Ignis's flames. Ignis frowned and retorted, "And your wind is too weak to stoke a real blaze." They began sparring, testing each other's limits. Hours passed as they progressed from minor skirmishes to summoning a massive firestorm together. They finally realized that by working together, their combined strength was not only greater but also more refined. As the gods regrouped at the Temple of Light, a voice from the future echoed through the air. It was Solien's voice, filled with gravity. "The ritual will demand a far greater price than you expect," the voice warned. "One of you must sacrifice all your power to maintain balance. Be prepared." A heavy silence fell over the group. The gods exchanged uncertain glances, none willing to face the inevitable cost. Elandra, her eyes resolute, stood and spoke firmly. "If someone must make the sacrifice, I will do it."
Her words carried unwavering determination, leaving the room steeped in both admiration and apprehension. Chapter 103. The Path to Harmony. The air within the Temple of Light remained heavy following Solien's forewarning of the future. The gods stood around a stone table, where a fragment of an ancient map and the book The Balance of Light lay open. Despite their shared commitment to this journey, lingering disagreements felt like invisible daggers slicing through their trust. Ignis, flames flickering around his hands, broke the silence.
"I still don't understand why we're relying on a mortal. She's not one of us.
How could she possibly grasp the weight and responsibility of our powers?" "We need unity," Zephyra retorted, her voice gentle but firm, like a sudden gale. "If you can't see that, you'll be the one dragging us down." "Enough!" Auren's voice cut through the tension as the light radiating from him calmed the room. "We have no time for petty arguments. If this ritual is our only hope, we must place our faith in Elandra, and in each other." Standing quietly at the edge of the room, Elandra stepped forward. Though her small frame seemed overshadowed by the god's grandeur, her eyes burned with determination. "I'm not asking for your trust, but I'll do everything to prove I'm worthy of it." Her words silenced the room. A fragile yet powerful sense of trust began to bloom among them. Elandra decided her first task was to reactivate the sacred lighthouse, a symbol of peace and hope extinguished by darkness centuries ago. The lighthouse stood on a small island in the middle of the ocean, once the battlefield where light and shadow clashed fiercely. With Thalios's aid, Elandra crossed the turbulent seas to reach the island. The scene was desolate. Crumbled stone towers surrounded the massive lighthouse, now choked with dead vines. "Reactivating it requires more than light. It demands sacrifice," Thalios said gravely. "Very. Are you ready?" Elandra nodded and entered the lighthouse's central chamber. A large stone pedestal stood at its heart, its swirling patterns of light long dormant. She placed her hands upon it and poured her energy into its core. Light surged upward from the base, spiraling to the top and illuminating the ocean. A message of peace rippled across the world, awakening the long-lost hope within all living beings. While Elandra revived the lighthouse, Zephyra ventured into an ancient forest where nature still lingered, but was steadily weakening. She sensed that if the wind could harmonize with nature, her power would grow. Deep in the dense woods, Zephyra faced a challenging trial, the confrontation with Arboris, the ancient guardian of nature. Arboris stood tall like a great tree, his deep green eyes filled with wisdom. "Away. You are unworthy of the wind's power if you do not understand nature," Arboris rumbled, his voice like thunder rolling through the earth. Zephyra had to prove her patience and sincerity by completing several tasks, rescuing animals from danger, restoring dried streams, and ultimately facing herself, a chaotic whirlwind symbolizing her inner turmoil. After overcoming the trials, Zephyra earned Arboris's approval and forged a stronger bond between wind and nature. Meanwhile, Thalios returned to his domain to undertake an essential mission: reviving mythical sea creatures weakened by darkness. The oceans, once a cradle of life, now lay stagnant and lifeless. Thalios summoned his power, unleashing massive waves that cleansed coral reefs and purged the seas of shadow. Mythical creatures like ancient sharks, sea dragons, and merfolk were restored, rising as protectors of the oceans. In a moment of clarity, Thalios realized his true strength lay not in controlling the seas, but in connecting with and safeguarding all who depended on them. Despite the gods' progress in restoring the world, darkness continued to spread from hidden corners. Umbra, the harbinger of shadow, began regaining power through residual energy from the fractured timeline. In an abandoned region, shadow creatures gathered, preparing for a massive assault. They infiltrated villages, spreading fear and obliterating any trace of hope. Sensing the resurgence of darkness, Solian convened the gods. "We cannot allow the shadow to spread further. The final battle is upon us," he declared. After completing her task, Elandra stood atop the restored lighthouse of light, gazing at the horizon where darkness gathered. Despite being a mortal among gods, she felt neither small nor weak. "I promise," she said, her voice carrying on the wind. "No matter the cost, I will do everything to protect this world." The lighthouse's beam flared brighter, as if echoing her vow, etching it into the fabric of time. The light spread far and wide, serving as a final call to arms. The gods exchanged determined looks, knowing the ultimate confrontation awaited. Darkness had rallied, and the final battle loomed ahead. Chapter 104. The Power of Sacrifice. Light from the lighthouse illuminated the lands, carrying an urgent message, a final call. Every being, from minor gods to mythical creatures, felt the urgency resonating through the beams. Giant birds tore through the sky, spreading the word to every hidden corner of the world. At the Temple of Light, the gods prepared for the decisive battle. Auren stood at the forefront, his commanding gaze sweeping over the group. "We must summon every ally, from the smallest creatures to the mightiest remaining gods. This battle will determine the fate of our world." Zephyra spread her wind-forged wings, generating a powerful cyclone to carry signals through the skies. Stally.
Thalios called upon tidal waves to notify the sea's inhabitants. Each signal, each call, echoed across the world, rallying the final warriors for the ultimate confrontation.
As allies began to gather, Solara stepped forward with a small wooden box wrapped in vines. "I've kept this secret for far too long," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "This is an ancient relic of nature, forged from the essence of life itself." She opened the box, revealing a radiant seed glowing with ethereal light. The seed can amplify the strength of whoever wields it, but it will drain their divine power permanently. Without caution, the user may vanish entirely. Silence fell over the group as their eyes fixed on the seed. Alondra, surrounded by a radiant aura, looked at Solara and said,
"This is a last resort.
We must only use it when all other options fail." In a blazing volcanic cave, Ignis stood before a torrent of molten lava, holding an ancient, battle-worn blade. "This will be my final sword," Ignis declared, his fiery gaze resolute. He began forging, channeling his divine fire into the blade. Lava surged, and sparks erupted as the sword absorbed Ignis's power, glowing brighter with each strike. When the blade was complete, it radiated a pure white flame, capable of not only destruction, but also purging darkness. Meanwhile, Nyxara ventured into the cavern housing the Black Crescent.
This sacred artifact marked the union of light and shadow, creating a unique energy source. She placed the crescent on a stone altar, summoning its latent power from the Earth's core. "You cannot harness this power without embracing your true nature," a voice echoed from the shadows, her own dark counterpart. "I no longer fear you," Nyxara replied firmly. You are a part of me, and I will use you to protect this world." Violet light emanated from the crescent, spreading into a barrier of shadow that surrounded the gods. The shield didn't just repel external threats, it eased the gods' burdens, allowing them to focus on their mission. At the sea where light met wind, Zephyra and Thalios worked together to seal the remnants of darkness. Thalios summoned massive tidal waves, while Zephyra conjured cyclones to sweep across the waters. "Focus on the rhythm of the ocean," Thalios said, his voice deep and steady. "Wind and water must harmonize like a symphony." Zephyra smiled, her eyes glowing with determination. "I understand now. Let's create an unstoppable force together." They forged a perfect storm, powerful yet orderly, blocking any shadow attempting to escape through the sea. Mythical creatures, including luminous whales and water dragons, joined the alliance, amplifying their strength. Enveloped by the lighthouse's radiant glow, Alondra felt a profound change within herself. She was no longer an ordinary mortal. The light surrounding her grew so intense that even the gods were awestruck. "Alondra," Auren said, his voice filled with admiration, "you have surpassed the limits of humanity. You've reached divinity." Alondra remained silent, her gaze fixed on the horizon where darkness gathered. Her light was not just a weapon but a beacon of hope for all who fought. The light, emanating from Alondra, spread far and wide, declaring that the final battle was upon them. Gods, allies, and mythical creatures all turned their focus to the world's center, where light and shadow would decide the fate of existence. Chapter 105. The final battle begins. The world's center, where light and darkness converged in their most powerful forms, stood as a desolate yet majestic wasteland. The gods stood on a towering mountain ridge overlooking the dark forces assembling below. The air felt dense, heavy, with chaotic energy emanating from deep within the earth. Alondra, her body radiating brilliant light, gazed at the horizon. "This is where everything will be decided," she said with unwavering certainty. Beside her, Auren held the eternal torch aloft, its golden light spreading across the surrounding expanse. "We must act now. If we delay, the darkness will fully resurrect, and it will be unstoppable." From afar, allies began to emerge. Mythical creatures, like dragons, phoenixes, and radiant warriors, gathered around the gods, preparing for the most pivotal battle in history. At the epicenter of the wasteland, darkness rose like a massive storm, swirling and surging upward. A deafening roar echoed through the skies as a colossal figure emerged from the depths. Malgrath, demon of greed, long sealed away centuries ago. His form, clad in gleaming black armor inlaid with glowing golden gemstones, radiated an overwhelming aura of power. His eyes burned like twin infernos, and every step he took caused the earth to quake. "I have returned," Malgrath thundered, his voice rolling like a storm. "This world will belong to me, and all of you will bow as slaves to insatiable greed." The darkness began draining energy from the land, sea, and sky, leaving everything dry and lifeless in its wake. Without hesitation, Auren led the charge, his torch blazing like a miniature sun. "We must stop him before he fully regains his strength, Fulbren," Auren shouted as he rushed toward the shadowy army. The enemy forces consisted of horrifying creatures born from greed and hatred. Over it, Auren summoned a surge of powerful light, creating beams that pierced the sky and obliterated hundreds of creatures in an instant. A fierce battle erupted as the gods clashed with the shadow army. Zephyra wielded her wind powers to create whirlwinds that repelled enemies, while Thalios unleashed waves that washed away the darkness. From a distance, Malgrath observed with a cold smirk. "Your light is insufficient to defeat me, Auren. Greed is eternal, and I am its embodiment." Treat. Amid the chaos, Nyxara took charge of sealing off the pathways to prevent reinforcements from the shadow army. Standing atop a peak, the black crescent moon in her hand glowed faintly. "You will go no further," she declared, her voice cold yet resolute. She summoned a massive shadow barrier, encasing the surrounding area. This barrier was more than a physical blockade. It sapped the strength of the shadow creatures, causing them to weaken and dissolve. However, maintaining the barrier drained Nyxara's energy. Though sweat beaded on her brow, her eyes burned with determination. "I won't let you destroy this world." Closer to the heart of darkness, Malgrath erected a powerful shield of primordial shadow energy to protect himself. Ordinary powers couldn't penetrate it. Ignis and Zephyra were tasked with breaking through this formidable barrier. Standing before the immense wall of darkness, their eyes glimmered with resolve. "My fire will burn through anything," Ignis declared, his flaming sword blazing fiercely. "And my wind will carry that fire farther than ever before," Zephyra replied, her wings beating in a growing vortex. They launched their assault, combining fire and wind to create a massive firestorm. The swirling inferno crashed into the barrier, burning away layer after layer of darkness. Finally, the barrier shattered, revealing Malgrath standing at its core. With the barrier destroyed, Alondra stepped forward. She was prepared to activate the ritual of balance, using light to seal away Malgrath's power and end the cycle of darkness. Standing at the center of the battlefield, she raised her hands, her body glowing with an intense light. The other gods encircled her, channeling their strength into the ritual. "Everyone must focus," Alondra commanded, her voice firm and commanding. "Light and darkness must reach equilibrium, or everything will collapse." As the ritual began, a colossal ring of light formed, enveloping the entire area. The light pushed back the darkness and began weakening Malgrath's strength. He roared in fury, struggling to break free, but the gods held him at bay. As the ring of light intensified, Malgrath howled in pain, yet the darkness around him continued to expand. The gods knew that a great sacrifice would be required to complete the ritual and end the battle. The collision of light and darkness erupted in a massive explosion, signaling the beginning of a new chapter in their journey. Chapter 106. The Final Flame. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, engulfing the land before Malgrath's castle. Shadows swallowed the scenery, with only the faint glow of Auren's eternal torch illuminating the group's path. A chilling wind swept through, carrying the acrid scent of sulfur, thickening the oppressive air. Ignis turned to his comrades, his fiery gaze brimming with resolve. "We've come too far to turn back now," he declared. "Malgrath will pay for what he has done." Solara responded with a soft but firm voice. "But not at the cost of meaningless sacrifices. We must find a way to win without losing anyone else." Alondra clutched her staff of light tightly, her breaths trembling. "I'll do everything to protect you all. Don't let the darkness divide us." As the group advanced toward the castle, the oppressive darkness seemed eager to consume them. High above, Malgrath stood tall, his crimson cloak billowing in the wind. "You're fools to think you can stand against me," he bellowed, his laughter echoing ominously. Raising a glowing treasure chest, he summoned shadowy entities that surged toward the gods, forming an overwhelming army. These creatures, slender but bristling with spikes, glared with blood-red eyes as they surrounded the group. Ignis stepped forward. "I'll clear the way," he roared, his flaming sword blazing fiercely. He swung it, unleashing waves of fire that incinerated countless foes. Yet the shadows multiplied endlessly, birthing more from the consuming darkness. The battle dragged on longer than anticipated.
Solien, wielding the eternal hourglass, slowed time to reduce the enemy's assault. However, even his strength began to wane. "We can't hold on much longer," Solien said, his voice low and tense. Thalios, using his giant trident, conjured a towering wall of water to block an onslaught. "We need a breakthrough," he shouted, sweat streaming down his azure face. Before Malgrath's final defense, the god's light faltered, unable to pierce through. Solien analyzed the barrier and identified its strength, a fusion of dark magic and greed stemming from the treasure chest. "We need immense power to destroy this," he warned. Ignis stepped forward, his expression resolute. "I'll do it." Solara grabbed his arm. "No, there must be another way." Ignis smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I've spent my life protecting the light. Now it's time for me to do so one last time." Summoning all his power, flames erupted around him, burning so intensely that even the shadows retreated. "Flame storm!" Ignis shouted, unleashing a fiery explosion that shattered the barrier. As the defense fell, his body dissolved into radiant light. "Don't let my sacrifice be in vain." His final words echoed through the air, leaving behind silence and sorrow. With the barrier destroyed, Malgrath launched a massive wave of darkness in retaliation. It surged forward with terrifying speed, aiming to engulf everything. The gods recoiled, unable to evade in time. Elandra stepped up, gripping her staff of light. "No one else will die," she cried, summoning a protective shield of brilliant light to repel the wave. Exhausted, she collapsed, her strength drained, but her light created a safe passage. Inside the castle, Nyxara prepared the sealing ritual. She placed divine relics around the magical circle, her violet eyes glowing with intensity. "We don't have much time. Everyone, focus your power here." Auren, Zephyra, Solara, and Solien channeled their energy into the ritual. Light and darkness swirled together, creating a breathtaking spectacle. But Malgrath retaliated, summoning a colossal shadow beast to disrupt their efforts. The giant creature appeared, its crimson eyes glaring, and its body covered in deadly spikes. It lunged forward, but Thalios intercepted it. "The sea is a place of freedom, not a tool for darkness," he shouted, summoning a massive tidal wave with his trident. The battle raged on, waves colliding with the beast's strength, sending towering sprays of water into the air. At last, Thalios used all his power to drive his trident into the beast's core, destroying it. However, the effort left him drained, kneeling on the ground. With the shadow beast defeated, Nyxara completed the ritual. The circle of light shone brilliantly, forcing Malgrath's darkness to retreat inch by inch. Unyielding, he drew power from the treasure chest for a final counterattack. A tremendous explosion erupted as light clashed with darkness, shaking the entire realm. In that fleeting moment, the gods could not tell whether victory or despair awaited them. Chapter 107. Harmony between light and darkness. The space fell into an eerie silence after the explosion. The sky above, once shrouded in pitch-black darkness, now shimmered faintly, as light attempted to dispel the lingering night. On the ground, the group of deities and Elandra lay scattered, their bodies weary and gravely injured. Auren was the first to rise, the eternal torch in his hand glowing faintly. He glanced around, worry etched on his face. "Is anyone still alive?" he called out, breaking the oppressive silence. Solien used her staff to stand. "The ritual is complete. But was the price too high?" Nyxara, her pale purple eyes dim, staggered toward the center of the circle. "The darkness hasn't been fully eradicated, but it's been pushed back significantly." The group fell silent, as they watched the remains of the shadowy creatures dissolve into the air. A gentle light emanated from above, blanketing the land in a soothing glow. The beginning of light's resurgence. The light from the ritual spread far and wide, purging every trace of darkness. Dead plants began to regrow, vibrant and green. Streams that had long dried up flowed again, carrying new life to the desolate lands. Solara knelt, her hands resting on the earth. "Nature has finally returned," she whispered, though her voice carried a deep sadness. She understood that sustaining this revival would require more than she could give. Solara rose, her dark green vine-like hair glowing brightly. "Everyone, listen to me," she said, her voice strong and resolute. "Nature can revive, but the balance remains fragile. To ensure light's ultimate victory, a sacrifice must be made."
Auren's eyes flashed with concern. "What are you saying, Solara?"
She smiled gently, determination shining in her gaze. "The final breath of the forest will fortify nature's strength forever." Defined. Before anyone could stop her, Solara began channeling the essence of nature. Her body radiated light as flowers and vines wrapped around her, forming a massive vortex of energy. Light emanated from her, spreading across the land, transforming the cracked earth into a vibrant haven.
But her body began to fade as well.
"Protect this world, for it's worth everything," she said in her final moments, before dissolving into millions of glowing particles that merged with the space around them. Zephyra knelt, her wings folding in sorrow. "Solara," she whispered, her voice trembling. Despite her grief, she knew Solara's actions were justified. Auren approached, placing a hand on Zephyra's shoulder. "We can't let her sacrifice be in vain. We must move forward." Zephyra stood, her eyes now burning with resolve. "I will protect this world." For Solara, a glowing inscription appeared in the sky. Solien, her eyes shining like hourglasses, read aloud, "The world has been saved, but peace is never eternal. You must continue to preserve the balance between light and darkness."
Nyxara gazed at the inscription, her eyes reflecting deep contemplation.
"Without darkness, light cannot exist, but darkness must never overstep its boundaries." Solien nodded. "That is our duty, not just now, but forever." As the light's revival spread across the land, life began to emerge anew. Mortals and mythical creatures alike gathered, kneeling before the deities, but most reverently, before Elandra. "You've accomplished what none of us could," Auren said, admiration gleaming in his eyes. "You're no longer just a mortal, Elandra. You are the new goddess of light." Elandra was stunned, but as she saw the faith in their eyes, she understood that this responsibility was hers to bear. "I won't let anyone down," she declared, her voice firm with determination. As light and darkness began to find harmony, a new era unfolded. The scars of war remained, but amidst the sorrow, life began to flourish anew. Standing atop a high peak, the deities gazed down at the revitalized land.
"We've won," Auren said, though his voice carried the weight of their losses.
"This victory isn't just ours," Nyxara added. "It belongs to all who sacrificed for life."
As light spread everywhere, a sudden burst of dark energy erupted from the earth.
It was Malgrath,
no longer a mere demon but now fully fused with darkness, becoming the ultimate shadow entity. "Light cannot triumph over eternal darkness," his voice thundered across the heavens. Auren tightened his grip on the eternal torch, determination blazing in his eyes.
"Then let my light prove otherwise." Chapter 108. The Decisive Moment. As light spread across the land, the ground trembled violently. From deep within the earth, a surge of darkness erupted, engulfing the sky. Malgrath emerged, transformed into a completely different form. His enormous body was enshrouded in swirling tendrils of dark energy, and his golden eyes now burned like glowing pits of endless depth. Each of his steps shattered the ground, birthing smaller dark creatures that sowed terror in their wake. His voice reverberated like a symphony of thousands. "You think feeble light can defeat me? I am eternal darkness." Nyxara, standing behind, felt the immense power emanating from him. "He's fully merged with the darkness. This is no longer the Malgrath we knew." Auren stepped forward, holding the eternal torch, which flared brilliantly, illuminating the space around him. "You're right, Malgrath. Light alone cannot stand against you. But I'll show you its power when combined with hope."
Auren raised the eternal torch, summoning his strongest spell, Summon of Dawn. A brilliant beam of light erupted, streaking toward Malgrath. However, the darkness surrounding him absorbed the attack, as if the light dissolved upon contact.
"You're too weak, Auren!"
"Now!" Malgrath roared, unleashing shadowy tendrils that shot toward Auren at blinding speed, stretching to engulf him. Auren dodged the strikes, but one tendril struck his chest, sending him hurtling back dozens of steps. The ground beneath him cracked, yet he rose, determination blazing in his eyes. "You will never destroy the light," he declared. Their battle raged on, a relentless clash of light and darkness. Explosions rocked the battlefield, yet Malgrath grew stronger with each exchange, his darkness seemingly infinite. From afar, Solara stood amid patches of green land revived by her magic. Watching Auren falter, she knew she couldn't remain idle. "Nature is the most enduring strength," she whispered, placing her hands on the ground. And it will endure, even if I do not. Solara summoned all her power, creating a massive whirlwind of vines. The storm of greenery tore through, dispelling part of the darkness and shrouding Malgrath. But the cost was high. Her body began to dissolve into delicate threads of light. Alondra rushed to her side, grabbing her hand. "No, you can't do this." Solara smiled gently. "We fight not just for ourselves but for all that's worth saving. I must go." As she vanished, a small forest sprouted where she had stood, a symbol of eternal hope, reminding everyone that nature never truly fades. Solara's sacrifice awakened a growing power within Alondra. Grasping the ancient tome in her hands, she flipped to its final pages. "This spell only activates when light and nature unite," she murmured. Combining the eternal torch's light with the tome, Alondra created a massive vortex of light. The radiant energy not only drove back the shadowy horde, but purified them, transforming them into tiny particles of light that dissipated into the air. "This is our chance," she shouted, carving a path for the gods to advance toward Malgrath. Realizing the threat, Malgrath summoned a storm of darkness to envelop the land. Before it could spread, Solian stepped forward, raising the eternal hourglass high. With a commanding voice he declared, "Halt! All motion!" Time within the area froze instantly. Malgrath's shadowy tendrils froze mid-air, and the dark storm hung suspended. Solian turned to his allies. "We have one chance. Prepare the decisive blow." The gods and Alondra quickly united their powers, summoning their most potent spells. Auren placed the eternal torch at the center, while Nyxara used her dark energy to stabilize the combined power. Zephyra and Thalios flanked them, reinforcing protective barriers. The gods devised a final strategy. Using all the ancient relic fragments to seal Malgrath forever, Solian began the sealing ritual, and each fragment glowed as they fused together. Malgrath, though immobilized, began breaking Solian's spell. His darkness oozed like molten lava, eroding the light barrier. "I will not be sealed again!" he roared. Zephyra summoned a colossal windstorm, pushing back his energy. Thalios sacrificed a portion of his oceanic power, creating a protective wall of water around the ritual. At the center, Alondra focused all her strength into the ancient tome and the eternal torch. As the ritual reached its peak, she shouted, "Return to where you belong, Malgrath!" Malgrath was drawn into the vortex of the seal. He roared as his darkness clung to the space, desperately pulling everything toward him. But the combined might of the gods overwhelmed him. With a final explosion of light, he was banished to the void. Peace returned to the land, the sky cleared, and light spread across the world. Yet the gods knew the cost of this victory was steep. Auren knelt, holding the eternal torch, its glow now imbued with a solemn meaning, a reminder of what had been lost. "We've sealed him, but is the world truly safe forever?" Solian placed a hand on Auren's shoulder. "We've done our best, but darkness never truly vanishes. We must always be prepared." Chapter 109. The Eternal Sealing Spell. The faint light from Auren's eternal torch illuminated the dense darkness that seemed eager to devour everything. Solian stood at the center of the ritual circle, raising the eternal hourglass to commence the sealing spell. Around him, fragments of ancient relics hovered, glowing and radiating a powerful energy. "Time is the most crucial element," Solian said in a deep, steady voice. "Every passing second determines the survival of this world." From within the shadows, Malgrath roared, defiant despite being pushed back. You think a fragile ritual can seal me forever? Darkness is eternal." Solian remained silent, closing his eyes to focus all his divine power on activating the seal. Golden beams of light radiated outward, striking the encroaching darkness, eliciting screeches of pain. Malgrath refused to let the ritual proceed undisturbed. From his body, countless tendrils of darkness shot forth, aiming at Solian and the group. Auren stepped forward, the eternal torch in his hand flaring brilliantly, forming a shield of light to protect his allies. "Come for me, Malgrath!" Auren bellowed, drawing the enemy's focus. He unleashed powerful bursts of light, slicing through the shadowy tendrils. But Malgrath's attacks grew fiercer with every strike, forcing Auren to push himself to the limit. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, but he refused to falter. "I will protect them, no matter the cost," he vowed silently. While Auren faced Malgrath head-on, Alondra stood at the edge of the ritual circle,
holding an ancient tome and a light torch. Closing her eyes, she channeled all her strength into purging the dark energy. From the ancient tome, a gentle yet commanding beam of light emerged, piercing Malgrath's massive form. Tiny cracks began to appear on the dark shell encasing him. You cannot endure forever, Malgrath, Elandra said, her voice calm yet resolute. Light will always find a way to cleanse the darkness. Malgrath howled in pain but retaliated, launching a dark energy blast toward Elandra.
Just in time, Zephyra intervened, summoning a whirlwind to deflect the attack. Zephyra, her delicate wings shimmering, soared gracefully through the air. Twisting and turning, she conjured a massive cyclone that swept away the advancing shadow army. The howling winds engulfed the dark creatures, easing the pressure on the gods. "I'll hold them off! Focus on the ritual!" Zephyra shouted, her voice cutting through the tempest. Her whirlwind not only slowed the shadow army but also created a protective barrier around the ritual circle. However, her strength began to wane. Even so, her unwavering gaze remained fixed on her comrades, brimming with trust and determination. Thalios stood resolute, wielding his massive trident against the relentless onslaught of darkness. He summoned the power of the seas, creating a swirling vortex of water that shielded the ritual circle. The shimmering waters formed an impenetrable wall of light and liquid. But Thalios knew it wasn't enough. Placing a hand over his heart, he whispered, "The sea has given me strength, and now I return it to protect this world." A surge of deep blue water shot skyward, merging with the ritual circle to strengthen its protective barrier. Thalios's body trembled, but he smiled faintly. The sea is inexhaustible. As long as it endures, so does hope. As the sealing ritual reached its peak, Solian raised the eternal hourglass high and declared, "The time has come." The fragments of ancient relics fused together, forming a colossal vortex of energy that engulfed Malgrath. He roared in defiance, his shadows thrashing violently, but they could not overpower the combined strength of the gods. "No! I will not be sealed again!"
Malgrath bellowed, but his form began to disintegrate, drawn into the swirling void. With a final burst of radiant light, the darkness was obliterated. Malgrath was cast into the void, and the land of light was finally freed. As the battle ended, Solian stood in the center of the ritual circle, the glow of his hourglass dimming. "The ritual is complete," he said softly, his voice calm and steady. Auren turned to him, concern etched on his face. "You're fading away." Solian smiled, placing a reassuring hand on Auren's shoulder. "This is the price I willingly pay. Time has given me so much, and now it must take something back."
Before vanishing, Solian left a message in the flow of time, urging the gods to protect peace and unity. His light faded, but the gratitude of his comrades would endure forever.
Welcome to Fantasy Realms. Enjoy the story, and thank you for your support. Chapter 110. A New Dawn. As the ritual circle concluded, the light from the eternal hourglass dimmed, leaving only a faint glow. Solian, standing at the center of the circle, gradually began to fade, as if swallowed by time itself. He turned back for one last glance at his comrades, his gaze serene yet filled with regret. "Time is the only force that never stops," Solian said, his voice echoing through the space. "Use the time I leave behind to preserve peace." Auren, holding the eternal torch, stepped forward, his eyes heavy with sorrow.
"You didn't have to sacrifice yourself. We could have protected this world together."
Solian smiled and placed a hand on Auren's shoulder. "We all have our roles to play. This is my end, but it's your beginning." As his words faded, a brilliant light enveloped him, then dissipated entirely into the ether. Beneath where he had stood, the ground turned lush and green, and a small, ancient tree sprouted, an eternal symbol of time's existence. After Solian's disappearance, the group of deities gathered at the Temple of Light. Auren, his eyes filled with determination, stood at the circle's center. "Elandra," he said, his voice resonating with authority, "you have proven yourself worthy. The light has chosen you."
Elandra stepped back, her eyes wide with disbelief.
"I'm just a mortal. I can't take the place of the gods." Nyxara stepped forward, her violet eyes glowing brightly. "You're more than a mortal, Elandra. From the moment you dared to stand against the darkness, you became a symbol of hope." Zephyra smiled, her wings fluttering softly. "You're the guiding light for all of us. Don't deny what the light has already chosen." Auren raised the eternal torch high, then placed it in Elandra's hands. The torch's light spread, engulfing her entirely. A radiant glow surrounded her, and when it subsided, Elandra stood clad in a white robe with golden trim, her eyes shining like the sun. "From this day forth, you are the goddess of light," Auren proclaimed, his voice warm and resolute. "You are the symbol of peace and hope for this world." At the site of Solara's sacrifice, a small forest began to grow. Vivid green vines and vibrant flowers spread across the once barren land. At the forest's center, an ancient tree trembled, and from within it, Solara emerged. Though her divine power had waned, her eyes were full of life. She touched the ground, feeling the life surging through it. "Nature never truly disappears," she said. "It only waits for the right time to return." When the group found her, Auren bowed deeply. "Your sacrifice saved the world. We will never forget." Solara smiled, gazing at the lush greenery around her. "I've returned, but I'm no longer the powerful goddess I once was. Let nature do its work. I will protect it from here." With the rebirth of light and nature, the deities began rebuilding the devastated lands. Zephyra used her power over wind to sweep away the remnants of darkness. Thalios channeled the ocean's waters into barren lands, reviving rivers and lakes. "We're not just restoring the world," Nyxara said, standing in the midst of a newly revived village. "We're rebuilding trust between humans and the divine." The gods held ceremonies across the lands, restoring temples and teaching humanity how to live in harmony with nature. Gradually, light and darkness found balance, and a new era of peace began. One peaceful night at the Temple of Light, Elandra noticed the eternal hourglass glowing faintly. A message from Solian appeared in the air. "Time never stops, but your actions will be remembered forever. Stay united, for darkness never truly vanishes." Elandra held the message close, taking it as a solemn reminder. She vowed never to let any force disrupt the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. On the first morning after darkness was fully vanquished, a radiant dawn stretched across the land. The group of deities gathered on the highest peak, where the first rays of light touched. "This isn't an end," Auren said softly. "It's the beginning of a new era." Elandra, now the goddess of light, smiled as she gazed down at the land. "We have triumphed, but this world still needs our protection." As the sun rose, the shadows of the previous night dissolved entirely. Yet, deep within the earth and sky, a fragile sense lingered, a reminder that peace must be guarded vigilantly, and the light must always be ready.